So in this video we're going to talk about your death. My death. Death, what does it mean? Now, we can have ideas about death, and we can have the idea that we meet loved ones in heaven that have passed, that we are reincarnated into other bodies or other animals, and that our soul survives, but we lose our memory of the previous life. Cyclical karmic rebirth, the ancient Hindu idea. Now, if they're ideas, then they can be something we can discuss, but if they become beliefs and we have a faith that that is true, then so be it. That is our way of answering the existential angst that lives within every human being's heart, the idea of oblivion, not being here, of everything that means anything to us, the end of our life. And so for people who have a belief or a faith, then that is fine, and that can be a wonderful way of living in peace and harmony whilst recognizing that one day this will all come to an end. But I'm talking now of the idea that we don't know what death is, and you could argue that no one really knows. There's lots of resources out there about NDEs, near-death experiences, and we can research those too, but again, they come from people who aren't dead. They come from people who have nearly died, or technically died, for a few minutes, and then they come back and report what that experience was. But again, that's problematic in as much as they're all individual experiences, and the physiology of the brain in those moments when the heart stops perhaps and there's deprived of oxygen can produce all sorts of phenomena that can then be reported upon and seen in a way that maybe gives some hope, light at the end of the tunnel, even being reunited with loved ones that have passed before. But I'm not here to argue against people's beliefs and faiths. I'm just here to discuss, perhaps personally, what the implications of death are, and how even we can have a discussion about it, because of course we've talked about consciousness before, being conscious, being consciously aware, and there's no flip side to that, because we can't experience being unconscious or being unaware, and death's like that, except it has a permanence to it. So when you see a dead body, there's something that is irreversible. When you see that, the person isn't there, the person that you knew isn't in front of you anymore. It's hard to define what is there, but it's certainly not the person, and that's something that I think most people who have lost a loved one will recognise immediately, that there's something missing. I mean, clearly the person is unresponsive, but it's not just unresponsive, it's actually there's like an emptiness or a shell that is left, and you know intuitively and instinctively that person is gone, and you can never see them again, speak to them again, converse with them, be in contact with them in the way that you are with anybody else that is alive. And it might sound obvious to state that, but these are the sort of things that just hit you without describing it like that, but you just know. And so death is different to unconsciousness in as much as if we do fall unconscious and then we come back and regain consciousness, then certainly we don't know what happened to us in the interim, but we're still here now anyway to discuss the before and after event. And death is different to that. So your death can't be experienced by you. People have fears leading up to death, that they don't want to be in pain, and that's understandable and natural, but the actual event itself we don't witness. We're not a part of that experiencing structure. It is the absence of experience. It is there is something final there, but is it a loss for oneself? Well, it's a loss of life, but then there is nothing there to recognize the loss. You don't preside over the fact that you berate the loss of the life because you're not there anymore. This is a similar conundrum that we face when we fall into deep sleep every night. Each of us disappears and then re-emerges from that deep sleep. The brain is in delta wave, and in that time period we don't exist. We're not there. It seems that the body and the mind and our psychology and our physiology need that deep sleep. Deprived of it, we go mad. So that is something that entering that oblivion every night seems to be important and necessary for our psychological and physical well-being, but we don't quite know why. You could say that's a taste of death, a small taste of death, but again, it's not really, because there's nothing there experiencing it. It's just an absence. We are absent. And so your death, my death, we can talk about it, but it's meaningless in as much as we won't be there to make meaning out of it. Now, when we look into the world and we lose loved ones, then there is a loss, clearly. Grief, and there's a gradual acceptance and coming to terms with that loss, that person has gone and will never be seen again. So there is a loss there for those who are alive and left behind. The person who's died has moved on to no one really knows. Moved on, disappeared. I remember asking a friend years ago when I was a teenager what his idea of death was, and he said, well, it's like, I imagine it as like sleeping but not dreaming and never waking up. So that's a description, but it doesn't really, there's no experience there. It's just something that you are trying to imagine. You're trying to imagine oblivion and emptiness and nothingness. But again, it's not our concern. We won't be there. In that sense, we never die. From our own subjective experience, we never die because we never experienced that death. Now, it's different for the loved ones who leave behind, but because we can see that in our own lives, we can see how it affects us when someone leaves their body, when someone dies. There is a loss there, but for them it's not a loss. We can't describe what it is for them. They're no longer there. From their perspective, they're no longer there. Of course, they live in our hearts, and they live on in our minds and in our thoughts and in our deeds and in our DNA and through our children's children, and there's that lineage. But for the person who is dead, when you die, you're not there to experience it. It is not something that you have, that you will know, that you will ever experience. So in that sense, from a personal perspective, one never dies.